Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're moving into the weekends, and as usual, that means we're going to be looking at some special selections, which is where you guys tell me exactly what you want me to check out. Today's selection comes at us from Jonathan Henderson, who requests Alfred Schnittke's Concerto Grosso No. 1, says it's a postmodern classical, not something we've had too much on the channel. It's very dissonant, but very fascinating. All right, let's get into this. Pretty excited. A lot of modern and postmodern classical. It's an area not only that we don't get to too often on the channel, but also something that I am sort of have a blind spot for. A lot of my classical training back in school was always, the history of classical, the greats. And there really is a bit of blind spot in education for modern classical. And this is something that, personally I need to explore more on my own time. I need to take that initiative. But I really do appreciate when we get to check out some stuff on the channel as well. All right, so let's dive into this and see what Schnittke's been up to. This came out 77, so anyways, let's dive in. Real quick, this is a 28-minute track, so pause the video, grab some water, grab a snack, and get comfy. All right, let's go. I was not kidding about that dissonance right off the start. Yeah, such a sparse intro already, but really leaning hard into that dissonance element. Really cool right there. I also like how each of these sections seem to have their own time field to them. I'm sure there is some overarching time signature that ties it all together, but being that each section is like its own little 4 to 8 bar pocket of music without any rhythmic drums or anything like that, anything providing a strong sense of rhythm, they all kind of have this idea of like pockets of time within a sea of timelessness. A very interesting. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a canon. Is this recorded live? This is a record of the Great Hall of Leningrad State Philharmonic Society. Yeah, I heard coughing, which is why. That was an interesting run. There was pockets of some consonants, not super harmonic, just less dissonant than a lot of the stuff that goes around it. It's very interesting because my brain is wanting to autocorrect the dissonance into consonants, into harmony. And I can hear a fantastic, harmonious song out of all this. But obviously the composer purposefully aimed for the dissonance of the song. I love the playfulness in the rhythmic elements in this section. Like if you just ignore the notes themselves and just listen to the way the different instrument voices play with rhythmic elements and how they interweave with each other, there's some beautiful sort of counterpoint in a rhythmic sense going on. The dynamics are astounding. Yes, really cool triplet thing going on there. I am interested in where this song fits within film's use of these specific sounds, the tension in the dissonance, as well as so many short, quick attacks that we associate with horror. And I wonder if this was influenced by that at all, or basically how all that fits together. Because without the context of being alive at the time this came out, to me, I've heard a lot of these sounds through Hollywood soundtracks, and that tends to be where my brain goes because I already have that association. But I wonder if to Schnittke, if this is a horror song to him, because that's where my brain goes. Yeah, this is a nice contrast from the last part, not only due to being softer, but this section is really taking its time. We have these long, drawn-out notes, a lot of time between when two notes are played, and also we have these really wide swells that come up and then come back down, as opposed to everything pretty much staying at the same level at the end of the last section. Interesting to note when he chooses to add these little moments. Usually it is just a quarter note or a half note, sometimes only between two instruments, of really strong positive harmony, consonants. When he chooses to place them, how long he chooses to place them, and how quickly we move right back to the dissonance. constantly wondering whether he wrote the song to have so much dissonance in it, or if he just had all the instruments tuned differently. Maybe a few cents off from each other, maybe drastic changes between them. Though I suppose the easiest way to do it, it could go either way, actually. I love how each movement has such a strong identity to it, usually in rhythmic ideas, because they're all highly dissonant, right? every section so far has sort of been a take on chaos, so to speak. At least that's where my brain goes. But I like how each section so far, I can assign a rhythmic identity to all four of the movements, which is really cool. That was quick. Yeah. What song? No, that's an homage right there. What song is that? flip this on its head, though. It's not it's like an interpretation of I just can't think of what it is. It's like buried within that chaos. I've heard that melody line before. Interesting how this is one of the few sections. I just talked about how each section had an identity, and this one doesn't know if it's got the drive and the energy or if it's withheld. Yeah, very cool idea right there of walking down a scale against a pedal note. What? I thought that was going to be the beginning of the next movement. Nope, psych. Oh man, ruined that resolution. Ah. There's that idea again from the beginning of this rondo. Well, from the beginning of this movement called rondo. The amount of times this guy sets up a beautiful resolution and then just destroys it. It's stressing me out. It's very interesting. Whatever that percussive instrument is, I'm pretty sure we started the song with those same, uh, with that same voice. And it led into sort of this ambient string work. All that happened in the prelude as well, and it's interesting to see that reflected here uh, in the postlude. Oh. Hmm. All right, I'm going to pull this list back up. That should help me talk about things, because, to be honest, I don't think I'm going to run out of things to talk about, but for such a lengthy song, this analysis might err on the shorter side compared to some of the other 30-minute tracks we've checked out. Oh, man. So I mentioned that I sort of assigned a rhythmic identity to each of these movements. And I think it's really cool that I could do that. Each one felt extremely distinct, despite all of them on the surface really just being very chaotic and dissonant. So what I basically saw this pattern of movements 1 and 6, the first and the last, being very atmospheric. There wasn't a lot of rhythmic identity or rhythmic movement. It's more about these very big swells and mixing up the swells with these really quiet sections, just creating this ambiance that sort of bookends the song I don't want to say the song proper, but where the meat of the music comes from. I don't think the song would be the same without the beginning and end. So I don't want to say the middle is the the main part of the song. It's completely different without the beginning and end. But a lot of the meat of the song, the intricacies, I would say, especially rhythmic and harmonic and uh, even in a sense harmonic, the way that the notes are playing off of each other. Uh, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is where the majority of the song takes place. So yeah, 1 and 6, beginning and end, atmospheric. The second movement had a ton of energy, really worked on um, fast rhythmic ideas. 3 introduced us to more of a meditative, longer notes, sort of a more legato approach to the chaos or the dissonance, however you want to see that. Movement 4, the cadence, was an interesting mix. We constantly moved back and forth between some of the faster stuff and the longer held out notes. And then the fifth movement, rondo, was where I felt we actually had a strong sense of song. In the traditional sense, we had uh, a better division. No, not a better, a more typical division of foundational work and lead lines and how they came together to create the idea of direction and destination, um, and purpose. Uh, I don't know how to talk about a song like this that kind of chucks everything music theory out the window without sounding dismissive. So I'm trying to choose my words better so it doesn't seem like I'm putting down the song, but I do feel that I am under equipped vocabulary wise to speak about uh, a song like this. So if it sounds like I'm putting down the song or diminishing it in any way, it's just because I don't have the right words. So if it sounds like I'm on the attack, I'm really just pointing things out. I just don't have the right words to be neutral about it or positive about it. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting that we can see a lot of these ideas of meandering, maybe. A lot of the sections I feel don't have much direction. They're sort of sitting within what they do. Not Some of the sections sort of feels like a slow burn. Others definitely have drive. They have energy, but they're not going anywhere. They're just kind of, you know, like sitting in mud and just spinning your tires. There's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of, a lot of force being applied, but just no forward momentum or backwards momentum. There's just, we're not going anywhere. And I think it's really interesting that up until we hit the fifth movement, that's kind of how I feel about the song. Is it's very much about just exploring a single idea. And once we hit the rondo, I feel like the song actually moves into a section of evolution where the song becomes more typically song like. It still embraces the dissonance and the basically the lack of consonants. It's still choosing notes, or the composer is still choosing notes that don't play well together. But the way that the melody lines are layered and the way that the foundational floor is being created and held, it feels like it's more traditionally written. It's following some more rules, so to speak. There's no rules to making art, but traditionally accepted patterns of writing. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well as rules. Um, During that rondo section, though, and that is the longest part of the song. We're looking at 9 minutes compared to let's see, the first movement is 5, The second movement is 4.5. The third movement is 6.5. The fourth movement is 2. And then the fifth movement, like I said, what is, oh, yeah. I wasn't counting that in ridiculously short form movement. So that brings us to 7, 8. Yeah, so it is the longest, but not by much. It's almost tied with that third movement. But it is the longest section. I feel it's also the most traditionally constructed as well, barring the intentional dissonance. And I do think it's my favorite part. Um, Now, interestingly, this is not a song I can really speak too much about the theoretical side of it. I'm going to touch on some ideas that I picked up on, like rhythmic layering and some counterpoint here and there. But for the most part, I think this falls under the same umbrella as that Penderecki song we listened to a couple weeks ago. It's very sonoristic. I don't know if that's a word. It falls under the sonorism style of writing, where it's not so much about what's played, it's about how it sounds, right? I don't believe the composer was thinking about all these notes and how they stack together, what characteristics, this triad's going to sound like. It's more about the fact of what is the end result? How does it sound? How does it make you feel? Very much in line with a lot of metal, especially the more textural environmental. Why do I keep saying that? Atmospheric metal stuff that's not too concerned with melodies or, counterpoint or, triads or anything like that. It really is focusing on let's make something sound heavy and aggressive and cool. And that's sonorism in a nutshell. Writing music by the way it sounds, not by the way it works theoretically. And with that said, I don't know how much worth there is in talking about some of the things that are popping up, like some of the interesting counterpoint, counter melody, dual melodies that are going on in that fifth movement. There are some really cool things. And I don't want to diminish their impact on that section. There's definitely some really cool things that pop up there, and it provides great contrast, especially to the cadence that came before it, and the prelude that came before it, and the eventual also postlude, and sort of the sparseness and how that contrasts with the extreme layering we see in Movement 5. But at the same time, I think that's seeing the trees for the forest, missing the forest for the trees, because I believe the song is more about how you feel listening to it rather than the intricacies that create the environment for you to feel what you feel while listening to it. And there's definitely a divide in me on what to talk about, or at least what to give importance to when I discuss this song. Because like I said, it is cool to notice some of this stuff, but I don't think it's as important as the overall idea here. But then I think about the idea. This is a very dissonant song, as Jonathan mentioned in the request. And the weird thing is, this is actually going to sound bad. All right. I don't get the song. Like, when we checked out Threnody to the Victims of Hiroshima, I felt something from all of that dissonance. And some of it could just be knowing the context to the track, knowing it is about, a historic event and the power of, the atomic bomb to be as destructive as it was, and understanding and feeling that destructive nature in the music. But I also think that I would have still come to that resolution even without knowing that prior. The song is full of these huge, powerful moments, these sharp stings. It's full of this idea of an overarching supernatural power kind of thing, something larger than any one person. Um, but this song didn't really make me feel anything. There were moments that got me to cringe. He is the master of ruined resolutions. There's so many times, even within the dissonance, he would set up a really nice ish, as nice as the dissonance would allow, chord progression. And instead of sticking with the, I guess, a medium level of dissonance that he utilized on the final note of the progression, going for that resolution, he would just completely change up the feeling of the tension, the feeling of the dissonance. So if he's working with, two notes right next to each other, maybe a half step away, or like 5.5 steps away, and it really pushes against that perfect fifth idea, and he kind of sticks within this harmony, uses a straight harmony, and keeps that level of dissonance the same throughout, and then resolved with that level of dissonance, there would have been some uh what is it? Some resolution there. I can't think of another word for it. Resolution is not what I want to say, but relief, release, whatever. But when it comes, he changes up the dissonance level, and usually for a greater effectiveness, more dissonance than he already had. And occasionally, I noticed he went from using a dyad to a triad, which is going to increase the tension. It's going to get worse. Instead of two notes clashing, there's three notes clashing, and if you pick the right three, the clashing is going to amplify even more, and it just gets so much worse. And I swear he did that every time, just setting up these these moments and then just gashing them to the ground, just completely stomping on them. Um, where was I going with that? I went on this rant about how he ruined chord progressions. I can't remember what I was talking about. Man, well, that's a bummer. Hmm. Oh yeah, he made me cringe with stuff like that. He kind of gave me hope with some sections like the rondo, which really introduced some different, like I said, more traditional ideas in the composition itself, and utilizing the dissonance of, well, the texture of the dissonance, while without changing up, also going into some postmodern ideas of melody and phrasing. He went with more traditional phrasing and composition, just utilized the texture of the intonation. Um, so the rondo was all right. I found it extremely listenable, actually, oddly enough. But past that, I mean, it's interesting how listenable the majority of it is, but I don't, like I said, I don't really feel any different. The song, I I enjoyed it. I guess it's about all I could say. I don't hate it. I didn't fall in love with it. I don't have a new perspective on things. It's just kind of there. And I don't I don't know, it kind of sucks. I think when I listen to something that challenges me like this, I kind of expect to walk away from it with a new viewpoint on things. And kind of I don't here. I appreciate it for what it is as an artistic approach to seeing how far we could take dissonance in music. And I like how he chooses to utilize some ideas that are more classical, more traditional for the style. There's lots of really great contrast in here, both volume wise and compositionally. Like I said, the prelude and postlude both work within textural stuff and atmospheric works, dealing with swells and kind of layering quiet voices. We hear a legato section. We have a nice staccato section. We have high volume. We have low volume. There's really is a lot of exploration of what can be done within this idea. The song never really, I don't feel like the song ever is satisfied with itself until we hit the postlude. Up until then, there's always the question of, okay, we did, a highly staccato section. Now what can we apply dissonance to? Okay, we did a nice, legato swelling section with, a lot of harmony work and, like a slow burn, high tension, really letting things go their full length and exploring, really letting these, dyads and triads, fill the air, so to speak, and let their sounds be heard. Now what? Let's do them both. Let's go back to back. Now what? Let's write a full song experience with dissonance. And at that point, it's like, okay, I think we've already, I think we've explored a good deal here. Let's wrap it up. And that, I mean, it's cool. Like I said, from an artistic perspective, but it just did not hit me like Penderecki's did. And I don't know. I guess that's okay, right? Music's allowed to bounce off of you. Maybe I'll come back to this in a month or a year or a decade, and it makes more sense to me. Whatever my experience is or my mood and emotions at the time connects with it. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. But I mean, unfortunately, right now, I just see it as an interesting what if, an interesting artistic piece. Um, I do want to say, though, I wonder how much of that is based off of my brain. Because a lot of these sections, I feel like my brain was reconfiguring to be consonant. I mentioned at the beginning that I could hear a beautiful song underneath all this. And I really noticed that in the rondo specifically when the song structure and ideas were more reminiscent of traditional writing rather than this more atmospheric modern idea of music writing or exploring sounds rather than creating strong melody lines. And especially in the rondo, I could feel my brain. I would hear the notes as they were, but when I began to think about the notes, they would be in harmony, and I actually heard a harmonious song within there. And I know the rondo was a little bit more consonant than the rest of the sections. I don't know if that was intentional or just a byproduct of having more moving parts and actually trying to write more traditionally with melody and sound floor and working within those. I also swear that main melody line that keeps coming up is an homage to somebody else. I want to say another Russian composer, and I can't think. There's a classical homage in there, and I can't for the life of me put a name to it. It's only like one idea though. It's not the full song. It's just like the most. I don't know. Somebody let me know. Uh, maybe I'm misremembering it. I don't know. Anyways, though, my brain just had a really easy time hearing a more harmonious version of that. And I don't feel like I'm meeting the song on its own merits there, on its own terms. I am hearing it as a completely different song. And I don't know, maybe there's something there too. Again, maybe I'll come back to it in the future and really meet it on its own terms and I am in a better position to connect with it. That's a possibility too, but I don't know. The other question I had, and I don't know who could answer this other than Schnittke, and I don't know if he's still alive to answer it. Um, but I talked about how the song feels very horror themed to me, And that's because a lot of these sounds, those sharp stings, especially in movements 2 and 4, mixed with the high dissonance and the timbre of the strings, are very, very much based in modern horror film. I don't know if it was popularized by Alfred Hitchcock, but I that's definitely sort of the beginnings of when I remember associating these sounds to horror music. Just think of the knife sounds from Psycho. Um, that high dissonant, shrill string sound, very sharp attacks too. Um, and we hear a lot of that in the second movement specifically, and a little bit more into the fourth. But that may have been my first introduction to those sounds, and it was paired with a visual component that has continued to be replicated in future horror films. So I also don't have a strong context for this type of music because my primary exposure to it has been with a specific theme in mind, which is, being scared. And I don't know if that was necessarily the goal of Schnittke as well, because, I mean, he could have just written this and it's not a horror song to him. So, but unfortunately, as a listener, that's going to be my first indication, which goes back to Threnody, to the victims of Hiroshima, because that also to me sounds very horrific. It has that horror, that big monster scariness. I have that association with it as well, but at least uh, it fits. I have the context of what the song's supposed to be about, and that thematic element fits very well with what he was going for. I don't know what the context of this is. I don't know if it's supposed to be horror inducing or fear inducing or not. The song certainly stresses me out at the very least, but uh, it's one of those things about context and how a person experiences different sounds and styles of music in their life and what order they do it. So yeah, just I don't know. I might have to come back to this one. I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I've put those thoughts into words mostly, but you know what it reminds me of actually is a Godspeed You, Black Emperor song, because it is highly experimental, a very slow burn, though it has moments of sort of more upbeatness and maybe some elements of traditional songwriting, but it is very much a song that aims for a specific emotion, and it does not have a problem taking a long time to get there. And much like Godspeed You, this is music that I can see an artistic edge to, but I'm just not, I don't connect with it. I can totally understand how people enjoy this, or maybe enjoyment might be the wrong word, but how they connect with it and how it might mean something to them. But unfortunately, I don't get that connection with this sort of dissonant music, at least not on its own. I actually think a lot of these comments would have been brought up in the Penderecki song as well, if I didn't have, if the thesis statement to the song, the core idea of the song wasn't in the title, I might have had some similar ideas. I might have felt that there was a concept of, a big, an evil force of some sort, but I wouldn't have had the validation from the title to know that that's where I should be going into with my analysis, my discussion, and pairing those ideas. I don't know what the theme is here to pair ideas to, and I'm not feeling a theme. There's a lot of songs that we've checked out recently. Even yesterday, I mentioned that I felt a theme of unity in the music. That's something that was just innately a part of the musical aspect that I felt came through very strongly. Um, but with here, I kind of feel like it's dissonant for dissonant's sake. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I haven't spoken to the composer, but that's kind of what I get out of it after a first listen. And unfortunately, it doesn't resonate with me. But yeah, I feel like I'm talking in circles now, so we are going to end the video. If I have any extra thoughts on this, maybe after it soaks in. I mean, it is almost 30 minutes of music. So maybe after it stews in my head for a little bit, maybe I'll post up a comment, pin it to the top. Maybe I'll drop something into community, like a community text post, if I have any additional thoughts on it after it marinates for a bit. But I don't know, it just is not connecting with me on a first listen. But I do appreciate what's going on, and I highly urge people to continue to push musical boundaries. It may not always work, and how it works is going to be on a listener to listener experience. It's very subjective if a song works in its exploration of non-standard or non-traditional ideas, but we don't know what music can do until we push the boundaries. So yeah, I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything like this. 100% continue to push boundaries with music, but yeah, this one just didn't work for me. But those are just my thoughts on a first listen. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you found anything in this. Maybe it connected with you, or something like that. Go ahead and post those comments down there. Let me know your perspective on this. I am very interested to hear how other people interpret this or listen to it, or what they get out of it, any themes they might hear. I'm very receptive to starting conversations about music, especially ones that I don't get. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box. There's a link in there for Linktree, which is a very cool thing. It's a menu with all sorts of stuff related to the channel. Maybe you want to follow me on Twitter, or what else is in there? Join the Discord community, chat with other members of the community, or support the channel through Patreon. All sorts of stuff is in there. Above that, like, subscribe, ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We'll be doing one more special selection, but before moving into next week's theme. And until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.